Hi, Sean again. So, the Greeks talked about knowing thyself, and sometimes as a community of people whose whole reason for being is the pursuit of knowledge, sometimes it's good to remember that knowing ourselves is probably the most important pursuit that we partake of. Knowing who we are, really, and some people say this is all we can know. We can't know what's going on in other people's hearts and minds. We can only know ourselves. The irony, of course, the trick is that it's not easy to know ourselves because, of course, we tend to fool ourselves a lot about who we are. Psychologists will say that they've discovered that we are a lot easier on ourselves than we are on other people. So to really know ourselves, we need other people. We need to see ourselves through the eyes of those around us. And again, that's not an easy task because we tend to get defensive unless the feedback we get is positive. We tend to rationalize. So knowing ourselves is really being open to hearing what other people think about us, not that we might take it too personally or feel guilty about it, but that we can, as I say, see ourselves through the eyes of those who are closest to us. And this isn't only true of individuals, it's true of societies too. And as we get ready to celebrate and to commemorate Truth and Reconciliation Day, it's something that we should also keep in mind, that in terms of the broken relationships between the First Nations and the rest of us in Canada, really the fundamental task of truth and reconciliation is to learn to see ourselves, those of us who aren't First Nations, to see ourselves through the eyes of those who have suffered in many ways as a result of the history of this country, to begin to understand the way that they see us, because they see us probably more clearly than we see ourselves. So that's not an easy task either. In fact, it's probably more complex than just knowing ourselves individually. So really what we're going to engage in over the course of the next few days is a time of reflection on how we can be more open and more honest about the history of our country, not to do so much as to just start to reflect in order that we might think about and reflect on what it is that has to be done in the future to heal these broken relationships. So I hope that makes sense. The image that I use is that we are really, what we're seeking is to kind of have the First Nations people hold up a mirror for us so that we can see ourselves the way that they've seen us. Because in many ways they know us better than we know ourselves, because in so many ways they've been the recipient of our, maybe our worst selves, our shadow side. So no guilt, no shame, but just an openness is really what we're about. An openness, an honesty, and I think that maybe is a good general theme for the year, is just to be more open and honest and be able to hear more the feedback of others. Because after all, that is how we grow and how we learn where our strengths and our weaknesses are. So now we're going to look at a little film that was produced last year by some of our First Nation students, and I know you'll enjoy this and find it as moving as we did last year, and we think it's worth repeating.
My name is Anna, and I'm from Gitxsan, the First Nations, located along the Cedar River.
Hello, my name is Caitlin, and I'm Dene First Nations from Yellowknife.
My name is Henry Young, and my family is from the Wet'suwet'en part of BC.
Hi everyone, I'm Jasmine Bales, and I originate from the Saulteaux Dene, which is from Great Bear Lake and WT.
One of my great-grandmothers went to a day school until she was 13 years old, where she was told there was no more school for her.
In my family, my grandmother went to day school, and my great-grandmother went to residential school since she was 5, up until she was 18.
And this usually is pretty hard for me because I didn't know my grandma, and I know, well, the only thing I really knew a lot about her was that she went to a residential school.
It wasn't until recently that she opened up to her family about her experiences at day school and her worries about whether her children would have had to do the same. She went on to try and keep Gitxsan culture alive by learning to read and write in her native language and learning how to make traditional clothing and do traditional dances. She helped to create a cultural village on the reservation called Kazan.
I've seen firsthand the intergenerational trauma stemming from residential schools in my community.
Up until recently, I was unable to realize the true effects the residential school had caused. It essentially sparked cycles of abuse and addiction into those affected families. I was witnessing the ripples of intergenerational trauma and the after effects of residential school. The lack of conversation about this problem begins to allow children to normalize the things that they see and experience.
Orange Shirt Day for me provides an opportunity to raise awareness that although the residential school in Yellowknife closed in 1994 and they all closed in 1996, the effects of them are still present in every community.
Orange Shirt Day is very important to me because it gives me a lot of resources to learn about my family's ancestors, such as elders which would come into communities, and just learning resources like presentations to learn about.
Orange Shirt Day is important to our generation because it brings awareness and conversation about what happened to the survivors and how it affects us all as well. Having more actions taken about this problem would benefit our people in so many ways. My goal is to have the conversations that we start today help the future generations understand and realize how important this is to our people.
It's important to learn about these experiences as part of our education to honor those who didn't even have a right to one.
Orange Shirt Day just gives me the time to think about what that meant to my ancestors and how it affects other people today as well as myself.
Today is a day to remember, but it is also a day for action. It is a day to spread awareness and a day to embrace our beautiful traditions and heritage. And it is a day to honor the survivors and mourn the ones that we lost.
Non-Indigenous and Indigenous people alike take part in the spread of knowledge, recognition, and advancement towards reconciliation. All are welcome to wear an orange shirt. In the words of my traditional language, thank you, o Masicho.
Masicho, thank you.
Hi, my name is Darwin Douglas. I'm a grade 12 student in Lonsdale and also the Student Life Prefect. We are here to talk about something we are doing for Truth and Reconciliation Day in order to honor the victims of residential school. If you aren't from BC or Canada, you may not have heard of the unmarked mass graves at residential schools that have been uncovered across the country. Last June, the remains of 215 children were discovered at Kamloops Residential School in BC. In July, there were 751 more found at a residential school in Saskatchewan. Today, there are more than 3,200 graves found, and the number keeps growing. Some children were as young as 3 years old, and many were younger than our grade 8s.
After the initial discovery of the 215 children in Kamloops, Haida artist Tamara Bell and her son went from store to store buying shoes. They filled 6 large bags with different sneakers, boots, and moccasins. Inspired by the iconography used by other movements like Black Lives Matter, Bell said she chose the shoes specifically for their visual scale and as a powerful image that would be easy to replicate.
That's why tonight we are strongly encouraging students to lend a pair or two of shoes to help us honor and commemorate the lives of the lost children. Your heads of house will lead your house to the main building to place your shoes along the central hallway, with each pair representing a life lost to or affected by the residential school system.
It takes 7 generations for a culture to completely heal and regrow. The last residential school in Canada closed in 1996. Our generation, so this includes every student watching this right now, is the first generation to not have experienced residential schools on a personal level. But the effects are still being felt across Canada, and there's still so much work to be done.